Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bridging the Gap. I'm your host, Kelly Lovell. Today, we're joined by Cornel Amariei. He is a 22-year-old Romanian-born inventor, author, and entrepreneur. Now, Cornel, your story is quite incredible. You were born where both your parents had locomotive handicaps, as well as your sister, and that inspired your journey in creating inventions and helping our world. Do you want to maybe share a little bit of the work that you do and your journey thus far?
Well, the things which I'm most known for right now is inventing Lumen, which is a blind assisting device. So basically, it's a device which is able to partially regain part of the lost vision. So if you think of a blind individual, it can understand how to walk across a street. It can understand where a door is open, so he doesn't hit the door. He can walk through it. He can even identify a ball when it's coming to him, and he can catch it. So basically, it returns a bit of the vision which was lost. Not entirely, but mostly the sensorial perception of what space is. So you know how far an object is. You know what kind of objects are around you. That's for what I'm known right now, at least. I'm working in other devices for aiding locomotive handicap and some other devices. But that's pretty much all I can tell right now until we finish the intellectual property. And yeah, those are the things which keep me busy these days.
So what inspired you to pursue your inventions?
Well, looking long ago, I was very curious since I was very young. I learned to read when I was 3. I instantly fell in love with computers, and I still remember when I was like 3 and 4 years old, I was playing on them. At 7 years old, I designed my first website, and I began programming when I was around 7 or 8. With time, I really liked the part where computers can interact with things which are moving, for example, robots. So I built a lot of robots since I was like 14, 15. I began building them, and I built like 200 of them until now, which do pretty much everything. But the thing which I really like is creating things which do something, which move, which start a light, or now things which actually bring some meaning, like the Lumen pair of glasses, which help the visually impaired, or other devices which I'm working on. But to sum it up, I think curiosity was the first thing, and also living in a family where things were quite different because both of my parents have locomotive handicap. Really changed my perspective on what I should do, and computers, making things work, engineering in general. That's what I was 20 years ago. That's what I'm today.
Have you had any challenges along the way in bringing your inventions to light?
I could more easily tell you what were not challenges, but yes, even when I was young, when I had ideas, it was quite complicated and quite expensive to build them. So it's nice that you have an idea, but it takes a lot of energy and in some cases a lot of financial investment to take the idea you have and bring it forward to something which actually works. Again, at some point, academic life was a challenge because it took a lot of my time when my mind was focused on building things which solve different issues. My academic life also had to continue, and I couldn't ignore it. One thing which now looking backwards, I can remember I wanted to quit university so many times, but luckily I didn't. At least 20 times I was ready to quit it. I graduated 1 year ago, and it was one of the happiest moments of my life. And looking back 10 years, like looking back 5 years ago, I would still do it. Financial motivation, academics, they were all challenges at some point. But I wish I could do more things than what I'm doing. But time is a huge challenge because we only have 24 hours, unfortunately, and skipping sleep can only work for so long. So yeah, a lot of challenges, of course.
I want to touch on that a little bit because the entrepreneurship school debate is one that I think our generation struggles with quite a bit of. What is the right choice? Do we pursue our university? Do we leave university? Is there a right path, so to speak? In your experience, because you had mentioned that you did struggle with that, kind of what got you through that?
Well, what got me through, mostly parents. They actually convinced me to finish it. But truth is, it's an incredibly long debate if school is worth it or not anymore. I'm speaking mostly about higher education, about university, and I did finish. I almost quit 20 times. But in the end, what happened personally to me, a lot of the things which I studied at university I already knew before, because I was very, very interested in sciences and engineering. So university was not necessarily the place where I learned more things. It was the place where everything made sense, because it's one thing to learn on your own. It's very hard to find structured courses. I mean, you can find structured courses these days online, but to make a whole curriculum and be in an environment where people actually want to learn, and they want to learn in a structured way, that's very, very different. It's very hard on your own to study in a structured way. Right now, there are courses for everything online. Even in university, I was maybe sometimes skipping some of the classes which I did not like, and I just learned them in the last couple of weeks by doing online courses. But the whole environment, which made me focus on specific things and made me put everything into a certain order, that was very, very important. And even if I knew most of the stuff before, it really made a lot of sense, and everything put itself in the right spot in my mind by the time I finished. So structured education and all the connections you build in university and all the openings you have in university, I could argue that university is not even for learning. It's more for making connections, more for discussing with colleagues, or finding great doing great networking, being part of events, and really opens a lot of roads. Being on your own, it's a bit more difficult. So I wouldn't argue against it, even if I almost quit it. I wouldn't say that everybody has to do it, but if I have to choose, I'll go against it. So I'm still pro university.
I think you make some good points. You're right in the sense that even in entrepreneurship, even if it's not like engineering and you're just wanting to start your own business, I find there are certain aspects, like you can learn, there's some things that are very good for experiential learning, of learning as you go, so to speak, in your market. But things like operations and finances and certain things, and like you said, structures, it's really good to have that more formal background. You might not think you need it at the time, but when you get into deep scenarios, that structure can actually come very handy.
Well, it teaches you how to think. That's a very important thing. It doesn't teach you much. You don't learn necessarily that much, but it teaches you how to think and how to tackle a problem, which on your own is much more difficult. You really have to be exposed to a lot of problems to learn how to tackle a problem. And university, by the structure it has, is still, for most kind of majors, teaches you how to tackle it. So you don't necessarily learn everything. You at least remember some of the titles, and that would be good. But when you're facing a problem, you really have a different view on it.
Yes, and then for peers out there who, like you, may be might be looking to invent something or pursue engineering in different fields, do you have any advice for those who are trying to start out and just kind of bring their idea to fruition?
Definitely. First of all, it's not only engineering. Invention comes in everything. I just happen to be an engineer because I like making things move and making things do stuff when you tell them to or not tell them to. But invention really is about connecting the dots. That's how I call it. It's about taking something from here and something from here and connecting them in a way which nobody thought before. So a thing which I really, really encourage is exposure. The problem these days is that even academics, even industry really focuses us on one direction. The problem when you're very, very focused on one direction is that you kind of lose sight of what's in the left and the right. And innovation is just about taking a thing from the left, a thing from the right, and connecting them together. So being exposed to all kind of domains is really, really important. Personally, I'm also a musician and I love playing. I'm also a photographer. I also travel the world and I keep doing it. So all these small experiences combined actually give me insight in what might be useful and how to make it. A great example right now, I can't really go into detail. It's a new invention which we're working on in the company I'm working in. But for example, in the automotive industry, we have a lot of great engineers and scientists which really know their thing in the automotive industry. But when it came to solving some issues, they had no clue. And I actually found how to solve them in the photography industry, because we have great artists and great engineers in the photography industry. We have great engineers and scientists in the automotive industry, but we just don't happen to have someone which are in both, because a lot of problems in the automotive industry happened to be solved 20 years ago in the photography industry. And there are examples over examples on this. So exposure is definitely something very important. So don't necessarily focus on one thing in depth, but always keep your mind open to what happens in the left and the right. That's basically what innovation is.
Yes, definitely kind of take your blinders off. I agree with you that cross collaboration and population of ideas and sectors often is where you find the root of innovation. We always say like innovation is not on the path followed, so you have to be able to go off those paths in order to find your answers. With that in mind and kind of your diverse experiences, is there a moment looking back so far on your journey that is particularly memorable in helping you in succeeding?
I think there are a few lessons, not just one of them. I can remember way back ago, like 6-7 years ago, when we first founded I first founded a robotics club in Romania. I was the first high school robotics club of Romania. And I founded my personal team, which we went to competitions and everything. And I always had a very, let's call it, shamefully superior attitude over the people in my team, and really that affected the teamwork. So teamwork was something which was learned on the way. There are moments over moments when I failed as a leader back then, and that was one of the lessons. How to properly manage the finances in your startup. That's another lesson which I had to learn the hard way. But I don't think there are like a specific moment which changed a lot of things. But most of the great moments were related to failure. So I learned a lot from the failures. You can't really learn that much from winning. It makes you feel good, of course, but that's about it. But from failing, you can definitely learn a lot. So yeah, I can make a list of failures and what I learned from it. I would call it the lessons learned. But yeah, that's about it. A lot of them usually.
No, well, they always say like fail fast and fail forward. You're right in the sense that sometimes we don't like hearing critical feedback and criticism and things like that, but constructive feedback is probably the most valuable type of feedback, because as much as it's nice for people to tell you all the great job you're doing, you can't actually improve from that. But if someone gives you a constructive feedback, you can actually find a point to focus on and improve.
I agree. I've seen people where even to myself, but to other startup founders or inventors and stuff like that, I've seen people who just couldn't. Whenever they did something, everybody said it was great, even if it wasn't, and that was a huge problem because there was no way of improving. But when everybody thinks that what you're doing is great, it's just pointless. You'll never get better than that. Yeah, pretty much that.
So surround yourself. It's good to surround yourself with a supportive network, but also ones that challenge you and keep you on your toes, or aren't afraid to kind of point out some fallacies perhaps in what you're doing, because it does keep your mind open to considering all of those different angles.
I completely agree with that. I had the luck to have a infinite ambition in doing things. So I generally surrounded myself with people who didn't believe in, and it's quite a satisfaction to prove people wrong when you say that you will do the impossible and you actually achieve it. That's quite a satisfaction, I have to admit. But generally, you need both kind of feedback. You need the people to pat you on the shoulder and tell you that you're doing great, and you need the people who will tell you that what you're doing is crap. Sorry for the forward expression, but they are one of the most valuable feedbacks you can get.
Yeah, I would say let the no's fuel your motivation to achieve. Let them push you forward. When you look at our generation and look at young leaders around the world, there's a lot of things that can be said about youth today. I personally believe a good word to describe us as a change generation. I think that some of the labels don't necessarily embody our potential. When you think of your peers and the change generation, what does that represent to you?
So what happened differently in this generation, at least in the past 20, even around 20, 25 years? There's an exponential change because of all the new technology we have. Looking back in the 80s or the 70s, the technology was advancing and people had more ways to connect and more things to discuss about, but really nothing like what happened in the 2000s and the 2010s now. New technology all over. We have Facebook now, we have Snapchat now, we have Instagram now, we have everything. And really things are changing, and it's changing a lot how people think, especially people in my generation and younger than me. And it can be argued that it's for the better or the worse, but technically speaking, better things are coming from exposure to more things, better exposure to knowledge. It's easier than ever to find out about things. 20, 30 years ago, it was almost impossible to learn so fast what you can learn today. But with all these new technologies, a lot of commodity comes in place, so people are less encouraged to learn, which is an issue. At least I'm seeing it in East Europe and in Central Europe sometimes. But definitely, I would prefer living in these times rather than any other time before. Even if musically, I would love to be in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s. For everything else, I would love to be today. I wouldn't change today. But yeah, all this change, I agree, it's a changed generation. I'm just worried that everything will advance so fast that people will not be able to catch up, and there will be more and more directions everybody will go. There will be more ways of there will be a lot of different people in general. There'll be a lot of different people going in different things, and it will be quite a challenge to see if all this exponential changing will be for the good or for the worse.
And looking at your peers around the world, do you have any advice or a message to them as they start to shape our future?
Well, definitely stay open and really understand problems well before tackling them. It's quite bad to start working at a solution for a problem before you properly understand the problem. It's even worse to ignore problems, and we have quite a few these days, and they are quite well mediatized. That's a very good thing. Stay open to radical solutions and really believe that it can be done, because a lot of people just don't want to start things because they say that it cannot be done or somebody else will do it. But in the end, you don't have to surround yourself with four walls. The world is much bigger than that, and in the end, everybody can do anything. I mean, I was born in an East Europe country, in Romania, where few people know about generally, and here I am now. So I'm doing better and better by the day. So when there are people from developed countries and people who really, I've seen people who really said that I have this great idea, but somebody else will do it, or why should I do it, or I don't have the energy to do it, or nobody will listen to it. That's completely wrong. We live in the best time for actually taking an idea and moving it forwards. And definitely, if there's one advice would be to really do something about what you see around you, because too many people simply don't care about anything, and they just want to follow the known path, and that's it. And it's easier than ever now to make a new path, and people should definitely do it. Should really have the ambition and the courage to try and have no fear of failing. You'll learn more from failing than from anything else.
Thank you, Cornel. I think that I couldn't have said it better myself. In order to innovate, we have to have the courage to walk off the path and lead that new path ourselves. Can't keep following the pack and expect someone else to do it for us. If for our listeners out there, if you agree with Cornel, or you have further questions or advice to add to the conversation, please tag us online, and you can learn more of Cornel's story in our upcoming book. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any words of encouragement for those who are at the cusp of their innovation and are about to enter a journey like yours?
Well, I think I have about 2 quotes about it, and one has to be by Steve Jobs, and that is that innovation distinguishes the leader from the follower. That's definitely one of them. And the other one, which I don't think it's mine, but I think I'm the first one who said it, so probably it is. Success is just ambition and sacrifice, and while you have this too, everything else will come. If you really have the ambition to do something and you're willing to sacrifice things for it, then success is just a step away.
I love that quote. Thank you again so much for joining us. For those of you listening, it's your turn. What do you think? Add your thoughts to the discussion using the hashtag BridgingTheGap, and give this podcast a thumbs up if you like some of the comments and advice that has been shared today. Together, we can start bridging the gap between industry and youth.